that America should make more stuff in its own country for its own citizens, and that the American nation belongs to the American people. Let's reelect Donald J. Trump. Let's get this country back on track. Middletown, I love you. I wouldn't be here without you, and I will never forget where I came from. Go Middies, and God bless you guys. Thank you.
And you were just listening to now the vice presidential pick for the Republican ticket, JD Vance, for the first time in his very first rally since he was selected to join that ticket with former President Donald Trump just a week ago, something he recounted not only from earlier in his speech, but also his speech at the Republican National Convention last week that he will never forget where he came from. Now, he said that Trump had asked for his opinion on the statement that he was about to put out and wanted to talk a little bit more about Trump in a more human form, saying that Trump asked his son what he thought of this statement that he was going to put out about Vance that day. And we've seen a significant shift since JD Vance was first appointed to that ticket. I want to go now to Marc Clauson. He is a professor of history and law at Cedarville University. Professor Clauson, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to just first talk about some of your key takeaways from the speech that we just saw.
Yeah, I think the themes were fairly discernible. The first one being common sense, mainly in policy issues. The second one was having a truly democratic voting process. That is, the voters decide, not, as he put it, people in back rooms, billionaires, millionaires, and so forth. And then I think the third was just to indicate, to show people that Trump and JD Vance care for the common people. They care for the average person, the flyover country people, not so much for the West and East Coast elites. So I think you put those three together and you have the overall theme that let's take back America would be the overall overarching theme of all that.
Certainly. And the selection of JD Vance to join the ticket with Donald Trump didn't really diversify that ticket, if it would say, if it were Marco Rubio or someone to that effect. In the last week, since that has happened, we've had a serious change to who they are running against. Now, the biggest criticism, perhaps, of Joe Biden from this ticket was that he's old, maybe he doesn't know where he is. Do you see that maybe coming back to bite them if someone like Kamala Harris, who is only 59 years old, is Trump's opponent?
Yeah, it is going to excite the Democrats to a greater extent. It's going to galvanize them somewhat. I don't know in the long run in her campaign, I don't know whether she can make up for her deficits. And of course, the deficits that have been brought up about her and sometimes evidenced in her speeches and talks is that she doesn't seem to be very deep and can't understand policy matters very well and certainly doesn't articulate them very well. Now, we'll have to see whether that changes. But if she continues that pattern, then her youthfulness, her relative youthfulness, is not going to make much difference.
Certainly. And I believe JD Vance, he said that she didn't seem grateful. She didn't seem to have a lot of gratitude for her country, saying that both he himself and former President Trump have a lot of gratitude. Now, this decision that Kamala Harris would not just be the vice presidential ticket, maybe having to debate JD Vance, and this decision from current President Biden to step away from the race was just about 24 hours before JD Vance took this stage to give this speech. Do you see any maybe gaps in preparation for something like this? Because he did multiple times say, you know, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris together, grouping them both, and then later saying, well, I guess he's not running anymore. Did you see any gaps there?
Not really. I thought this was a pretty seamless speech, and I didn't really even notice that. And I don't think people would have noticed it either.
Certainly. And then lastly here, this speech was given in his hometown of Middletown, Ohio. But when Trump announced JD Vance on Truth Social as his pick for the vice presidential nominee, he specifically called out states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, of course, Ohio and Minnesota. What do you think a speech like this, kind of really digging deep on those issues like workers, energy workers, parents, grandparents, like he was raised? What do you think something like that, focusing on those issues, will make an impact on voters in those key swing states?
Well, I think it will. For one, he should have mentioned West Virginia, too, by the way. That's where I'm from. But aside from that, absolutely. The issues that people care about in the Midwest and the Great Lakes states and the upper Midwest and southern states really are bread and butter issues. We've lost jobs to foreign nations because of treaties and so forth, trade treaties. He is somewhat protectionist, yes. That's not necessarily all bad all the time. There are good reasons for that. There are Republicans who will criticize that, but that's one of the issues that's big. Workers' jobs, family values, that's certainly a huge thing for people living in those middle areas of the nation. And even Wisconsin, where Wisconsin tended to vote liberal, I think on some of the social issues and certainly some of the economic issues, they're going to tend to vote toward the Trump ticket, the Trump Vance ticket. And then you have the energy policy, Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia, and so forth. Those places that are energy producers, big energy producers, they're going to resonate with that kind of policy and those kinds of campaign promises. So, yeah, this is going to make a difference, I believe. Now, the question then remains, what do you do about those intractable states, California, New York, for example, to take but two? Do you give them up completely? I don't think Donald Trump's given up New York yet. California, probably. You might as well give up on that one. But will the other states in the middle make up the difference? That's where you have to appeal to independent voters. And once again, I think you could use the same policy issues to resonate with them as well.
Figuring out what they're doing next, do you think we'll see a shift from the Trump-Vance ticket in the coming days to kind of try and grab some of those more down-the-middle voters, to kind of reach across the aisle a little bit and see if they can get some of them on their side as well? Yeah,
they even started that today. If you're not with the Democratic Party, come over to our side. The water's warm. Come on in. That's just the beginning of what they're going to try to do. Now, they have to make the substantive case, obviously. They have to show them why. Why should you come with us? Because we care about workers, for example. States that are really strong on labor unions, for example, that have never been very Republican, at least not in recent decades, like Michigan, for example. Now they may rethink. The workers there in places like Michigan may rethink their viewpoints on that and come over to the Democratic side in greater numbers.
All right, Professor Marc Clauson from Cedarville University, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
All right, we'll have much more on the now vice presidential pick, Ohio Senator JD Vance's speech, coming up when we return. We'll be right back.